Hello, Cardstack community. My name is Christy. I'm the founding director of the Cardstack project, coming to you from the land of the Web3. Today, I'm joined by Rusty Matveev, who is talking to us about creative economy, and he is the CSO of Calaxy, which is pioneering the ability to get creators the power that they need, but also defining the form and the function of what Web3 brings to this new innovation of allowing creators to be their own best self and also run their own business in this metaverse and the broader Web3 ecosystem you see. Welcome, Rusty.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you having me.
So can you tell us a little bit about your role at Calaxy and like how the project came together, and what is your ultimate mission to kind of bring this new tool set to the creator that's defining our culture right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of Calaxy. The relationship goes a little broader than that. I think as in any startup, right, we all wear many hats. Mm-hmm. Our co-founders are actually NBA player Spencer Dinwiddie, who plays for the Dallas Mavericks, mm-hmm. as well as Solo Cisse, who was a Division I football player in his own right, and kind of has that network of many friends that did in fact make it to the pros and others. So we kind of have a unique angle from that standpoint. I always kind of tease and say, like, if this is a company that I started or myself and like the chief design officer, it wouldn't work the same, or we'd be much comparable to many other platforms. But because we're actually founded by creators and we're for mm-hmm. creators, it's just a different organic feel. Our mission is really simple. We want to be the de facto authority or the go-to central monetization source. And I cringe as I say central because I didn't mean to say it quite that way. But we want to be the de facto standard for creator monetization in the economy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think we talk about the word monetize in the creator economy with both excitement and cringe. When you get demonetized on YouTube is about the worst thing that can happen. That means that you post all your video, get million views, and get no money because you did something wrong. Hopefully, you know what it is. What is the driver monetization for creator that exists in kind of NBA players make a salary, but their monetization go well beyond that. Maybe tell us a little bit about like what monetization exists today in the Web2 social media and kind of the media landscape, and what do you think that is adding to or changing the Web3 version?
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll hear me use the word creator interchangeably, right? And I'll address that as athletes or musicians or content creators, artists, etc. So like bear in mind that. Look, an NBA player, for example, is not necessarily or specifically a content creator in a traditional sense at all, right? They have a following and there's a community there and they can engage. But in general, like their business is to play basketball and to be really good as they can. And to your point, that's where their revenue comes from, right? It's not necessarily from some other way. Whereas, if you're an artist and you're selling your work, or if you're, you happen to be a celebrity and an influencer, you can kind of monetize in different ways. So in the Web2 approach, I mean, a really obvious one is something like Cameo, where, mm-hmm. clearly, buy video messages and whatnot to say happy birthday or to say what's up to someone, which is, a pretty cool thing. And that's been one traditional path. Otherwise, it's been kind of around advertising on mm-hmm. like Instagram, even if it's, or YouTube, where it's like, you might not necessarily be advertising as we're speaking, but YouTube is creating revenue by running an ad during your video, right?
Right.
So in a weird way, your market value is assigned by a third party in YouTube, and then another third party with an advertiser, which is kind of a backwards approach in a weird way to look at things. So we kind of believe in flipping that model and shifting the power completely to the creator. Someone that has, 1 million followers, 100,000 followers, 10 million plus followers, and then has, that many views, let alone much more views. It's always been wild to me, that weird ratio of, we always hear that story of, oh, this went viral. It had 10 million views, 100 million views. Oh, I made like $10,000. Quite frankly, it's a weird dichotomy. Quite frankly, the majority of creators, and we know this data from the market, let alone our own in-depth conversations, they can't afford to pay their rent, even if they have 500,000 or multiple million followers. And that's exactly what we're trying to solve and empower them to, to have more direct, authentic engagement with their communities, and thus be able to monetize, in a way that's really mutually beneficial, because truly their community and fans want to be closer to them, want to have an opportunity to do something with them, whether it's a video or do something in the IRL version, right? Of go play golf mm-hmm. or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah. What you're saying is that the intermediaries, whether that's the platform itself or the kind of advertising network or the implied advertising ecosystem, has its own Lumascape, their own different logos that each of them make money for the ecosystem to sustain. That's really where it's draining, and the artist's direct relationship to the audience is essentially being broken apart or brought further, and that's where the leakage of that monetization opportunity. What do you think is, when you bring these two creator and the audience closer together, what type of monetization opportunity do you think is unique to the Web3 toolset that wasn't possible before with the Web2 model of Patreons or like donations and tips?
Yeah, so the methodology in terms of like donations, tips, and sort of just, you're using your credit card, and at least through our vision and mission, we want that to still be there, right? So those are all familiar behaviors you're used to doing, using your credit card, for example. And so while we're, technically a social token platform and we're technically a Web3 platform, right? We're built on Hedera and all that. We like to keep all that right under the hood. Like, so if you're a crypto native, and you can absolutely look for that and discover it and do things there. But if you're someone, if you're like a 15-year-old kid that's a fan of Ezekiel Elliott and the Dallas Cowboys, you might have no business or no care in the world for anything like that, right? You just want to go and have an opportunity to win tickets to the Cowboys game, or to go see Zeke Elliott in the locker room. And so, like, we empower that connection, and we like to bridge. We like to call ourselves sort of Web 2.5. So we bridge that gap of Web 2 and Web 3. So the opportunities that avail themselves, really, there is no limitation, meaning it's whatever the creators want to set up, and that's kind of what our platform does. So if a creator if a creator is a chef or a comedian or whatever they happen to be, they might be selling concert tickets or merch. They can completely do all of that and essentially create their own micro economy, if you will, through their social. So the benefits to the creator side, which are far more technical than we would actually communicate to the users, are much different. Because if a creator has, 1 million fans and everyone's holding one of his tokens or multiple of his tokens, you think of that as, like, again, not to get too technical, but this is a Web3 show, right? So circulating supply of his economy might look like X. And all of a sudden in the future down the road, there are opportunities to do things like, like stake that or yield that and really get gains that on the Web2 side, they would never exist. So, like, you wouldn't be able to, you might have, again, 5 million followers on Instagram, but you're not monetizing the fact that you have those short of, again, an advertiser coming to you and saying, hey, we want you to post this on here, or YouTube, or, again, Instagram just running an ad on your page. And again, if you think about this, like, if YouTube or whoever, let's just say like Joe Rogan, even on the extreme end, right? Spotify came to me and said, here's $200 million for this contract. Clearly, there's inherent value that they see that's significantly more than that. Otherwise, they wouldn't do that as a business.
Right.
So there's obviously a delta, and I'm sure it's not small. And while, of course, the market's changed and all that stuff, but I believe the day that it all happened, their market cap jumped by like several billion, if not 8 billion. So, like, clearly something's up much more than that number. And again, we're trying to tap into that to some degree.
Yeah, and I think that there's probably the intuitive sense that everybody has that the top creator on the top platform has a lot more power in monetization than that they're given credit for. And certainly the platform wouldn't tell you, by the way, you're worth 100 times more to me than we're currently paying you. That is not to be said, even if they believe within private emails that is indeed the case, or have the inkling, and that's the case. Do you think that the idea of social token, which is really about a private economy for creator, is something you can create without necessarily building your following on a public network? So that's the distribution monetization. A lot of people build their following through the algorithm, the free distribution, as they call it. And then they can now have some value, and they can say, okay, through the free distribution of podcasts, I can then get a more private deal with Spotify, which is a more close distribution. But hey, why did Rogan become what it? Because he gave his content, a very valuable content, away. Do you still see this need to go to public, free advertising support platform to build your audience, or including the NBA as a type of free distribution in a way? Or do you think that there's an opportunity to attract that initial distribution on a Web3 platform?
That's a wonderful observation and call it in general. So kudos on the question. I think it's exactly correct. So the way, at least strategically for how we're approaching it, we don't see ourselves competing with Instagram or Twitter, right? We think that's all very complementary. And I think you use the word free distribution, right? Exactly. Eventually down the road, and kind of even the next generation of content creators, and we have a whole bunch of ideas on how to how to create those and motivate those people. And as you know, as kids grow up and all that stuff, right? We see TikTok doing so much of that. We think that will be more native in this world, but for now, like we see no reason, at least as we start, right, selfishly, to like sort of break the mold and say, hey, come start here and start at zero. Absolutely not. Like if you have 50 followers here, that's amazing. Again, that's free distribution for us and for the creator, and they do want to tap into that existing, you know, community. The philosophy of like, you know, if that creator left, what would happen? And again, we did get a front row seat for that with Joe Rogan as the previous example.
Yes.
What would happen? I mean, I firmly believe and contest that, you know, content is king. That's not a novel idea. People will follow their creator, you know, short of, again, paywalls and that kind of thing might be a little bit more exclusive to like I guess more of a super fan or a fan that's willing to do it. But still, it's one of those things where that should be solely in the creator's hands, and what they want to do and how they want to approach it. It's in their power. Like it's their world, their community, and in our language, it's their Calaxy, right? It's their universe, if you will.
Right. Yeah, and I think, you know, if you think about the top, let's say 100, maybe even top 20 may have the same result of a creator within a particular platform. It is the platform. You take those 20 people out, there's something feels different, right? And then again, you don't know that because, you know, they're feeding the machines, and there's a mutually beneficial situation. Do you believe, you know, we have this debate going on right now in a very far away world of golf, right? So the PGA Tour has all the big stars, and now the Saudi-backed league is trying to take the creators, right? Like they create the shots, they create the chips and the putts, and they're having some success, pulling just enough for us to kind of experience what happens if there is a split in the multiverse, right? What do you think? Does the top creator define the platform enough that these you know, existing incumbent like TikTok, Instagram should be worried about some sort of substitute?
Again, love it. Love the question and love the example and the multiverse comment. That's great. So yeah, I mean, on one hand, you know, you look at something like TikTok, and I think that's a pretty live example of, you know, they kind of did it without necessarily having mainstream content creators, right? And then OnlyFans in a completely different way, right? Mainstream content creators, for probably obvious reasons, are staying out of that. Right. Closer to like a, you know, sort of the porn world, and there's more than just that, to be fair, but very different. Live Golf, or if that's how it's pronounced, is a great example of like, yeah, like, you know, with a bigger sort of hook or more money, more bankroll, can you go ahead and you know, like scoop these creators away? If anything, all of these points still point to the fact that the creators hold all the value. The community will follow the creators for the most part. And again, the golf thing sort of maybe different because of the demographics of who watches golf might be a little bit more traditional, plus the distribution. It's still, I think, a wonderful thing to look at to say like, hey, you know, where's the power in hand, and what does that all mean? I like it. I like to see all this. I think that, you know, one of the origins and kernels of this idea of Calaxy was Spencer, again, our co-founder, looking at saying, hey, I'm a free agent next season. You know, like what team should I go play for? Like as like a decision, which again, he said it tongue in cheek, but you know, it's a great example of what could be. And then he did it to a much smaller degree of, hey, I'm playing like the Lakers. What shoes should I wear? And so like that was the kernel to the entire vision of like all these, you know, democratizing decision making as one example of what creators could do. And yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of where the sky's the limit for that world, right? So again, it all falls back to what the creator wants to do and what they could do, and are they motivated enough to sort of do that? And I guess the rest is we'll see. Live Golf is one of those examples where if Tiger would have left, what would happen to the PGA? Right.
Yep. And it tells you the power curve, right? You know, sometimes it does make a difference if it's really top 1 or top 5 or top 10 in terms of pool, not just in terms of ranking, right?
And I think it's worth calling out because, as you mentioned, the top 100 and all that stuff, right? Everyone, including like I think Patreon, kind of proved this out to a big degree, where the sleeping giant, and it's not so sleeping anymore, but the giant middle class is a huge thing, let alone the emerging class, right? That's a whale and a half of people that, you know, they might have 10,000 followers, 50,000 followers, but there's a really niche, strong following there. And like that is a big group that should be empowered. And at the moment on the traditional places, they're really not.
That's true.
And that's a big deal. And I think like, you know, everyone has their own community, and I don't care if it's like your mom and your friends at first, but, you know, we see, I think you look at Reddit and, you know, you jump on randomly and there's someone just playing a saxophone. No one knows who this person is. All of a sudden there's 1,200 people watching, and it's like, oh, and they're tipping him and all that stuff. I mean, that at least in that one example, that is kind of like the platform giving more value to the creator, because he maybe wouldn't get 1,200 people if he was starting from zero. But again, it's sort of chicken and egg to some degree. You know, at the end of the day, we still believe in the power being at the creators, in the creators' hands.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that some creators are really really good at one platform and doesn't really translate to other ones. TikTokers may not be very good in long form type of writing on a Substack or whatever it might be, and then vice versa. And the creator made across some of those people have a couple of mediums that make sense for their niche, and there may be music or DJ, whatever, maybe to pick different things. Do you believe that in the Web3 version of the whole creator engagement, that we will need to break down the silos of these kind of type the format, or do you think that we will recreate the silo in a kind of skeuomorphic ways? Like, this is the decentralized TikTok, this is the decentralized Instagram, this is decentralized Medium. Which, by the way, if you look at the landscape of Web3 investment, that's what it looks like. It looks like people are looking for the Web3 alternative. As a token platform, creator token platform that may be seeing the creators' value more broadly than a particular expression, do you see the recreational silo, or do you see the blurring of the silos?
I mean, I'd like to say that I see the blurring of the silos. I mean, our vision in terms of a decentralization path is, it's again a little more technical, but there was also a protocol that was created that's called the Creators Galaxy Protocol, which essentially ensures that if I'm a creator, right, if you, Chris, create the Chris token or whatever you'd call it, that token lives on outside of it, well beyond Calaxy, regardless if Calaxy fails or succeeds. And so, again, it's the same theme of putting the power into your hands or into the creator's hands, which is like, I might be on TikTok or Instagram or Twitter or have a Shopify or whatever else, but really, if you put your own token on it or your own, again, economy to it, that's sort of still the key. You could think of it as an NFT or an access card or whatever it is. It's like the same principle. That's the key to your world. And you can completely, if you have the power to gate that way and say, hey, if you want to be part of my fan club, which is a feature we have, right, at Calaxy, if you want to be part of my fan club, that is the only way you can see my content, buy my things, have access to my shows, et cetera, et cetera. And so, like, that sounds like a silo, but theoretically, again, in the future, it might sit on, sort of like yourwebsite.com, right? Like, it doesn't have to be on Calaxy exclusively. In a sense, almost like a Linktree-esque type of thing, but it's yours. And at that point, you're decentralized. You're not necessarily siloed if you have the community. If you don't, and you're looking for to be discovered, and you need to be in those places, then sort of more power to you, and go to those places where you think people will find you. And then again, I think even in that scenario, the goal is still to get to a place where you're sort of not necessarily on your own, but you have more power, and you're not taxed everywhere. You're not, this and that, the silos you kind of explained.
Yeah, I love to use the example of Linktree. I mean, Linktree is literally the poster child of putting a spotlight on the fact that the creator is more than their own one platform of discovery, right? It's the hey, this is about me. This is my Linktree. This is all the places that's important to me. These are all the things that you may not know that I also do. I think this idea of Linktree, which I think drive a lot from the personal homepage era in Web 1, and people don't know that analogy anymore. It's like, what is a homepage? What is a tilde? On a university server. That was the very origin of the homepage, surfing from link to link and stuff like that. I agree with you. I think there is this idea of the substrate of the capability that is on blockchains and is greater than any one UI and platform that exists as an asset or as a record of relationships. Right, the fact that I own an NFT of a Spencer or something like that means that I am a fan or I'm a collector, and that can convert to other things that exists beyond the thing. And a particular platform, you can use that as the way to bootstrap new relationship, new platform. Yeah, I think that's a great vision.
No, appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, again, another sort of kudos to Spencer's vision. 2-3 years ago, again, he was in the news and infamous for securitizing or tokenizing his contract, right? His contract. He went through a lot of battles and, kind of got everyone to see the vision, but he did that, in an intentional way to sort of be the vanguard and to do it first. But really I've heard him say like, hey, in the future with a Spencer token, right? Can you buy some bread or buy a car or a house and like that kind of thing where it's completely interchangeable. I have to say, like, as someone that's been an entrepreneur, for 15 plus years and from the Web2 origins and before, the interoperability, at least in theory and in sort of in words, the interoperability attempts and the working together and the rising tide in the Web3 community has been, it's kind of not day and night, but it's a lot more refreshing and more collaborative so far in these early, like, first 5, whatever.
Yeah, for now.
Which is awesome to see. And again, as an investor, as an operator, like it is cool to see all that. So like we see that too, like being able to, to work with, with various marketplaces. In general, we see ourselves as kind of an experiential marketplace. Like, if we're a mall of stores and experiences, and the creators being the stores and their experiences being like the thing.
That makes a lot of sense. You mentioned that you are building on the Hedera blockchain. Obviously, I've had another show with Hedera folks, and it's really good to see ecosystem that is kind of thinking about usability, thinking about scalability, and thinking about a different way to solve problems that may not be the same as finance and a decentralized finance and important for liquidity concentration and stuff like that. Obviously, most of the people that will be following or that is following TikTokers or subscribing YouTubers probably intersect very small with people who have a Web3 wallet, a MetaMask account in the EVM space, and that's been a thing. What do you think is the missing piece, or how much of that are you filling in to allow the onboarding of that Web 2.5 experience to these Web3 primitives of staking, NFT purchases, access card, memberships, stuff like that? What are you doing to kind of level up or create a gradation of a gap between what people used to with a mobile phone and a notification icon to the more complicated concepts of addresses, private keys, and account names, different mix and combination depends on what ecosystem you're in.
Yeah, excellent question. And I think the first and biggest answer is, our UX, right? Our user journey, the design of it, the deliberate and methodical thought, planning and strategy of what that is. And I think, kudos to our chief design officer, Chad, as well as, again, Spencer and Solo, our co-founders, because they live in that world of Web2 social, like, right? They're natively there. They know what people do and what they want, both on the creator and user side. And then Chad was able to bring that vision to life. And again, I say that as we're not live quite yet, but we're in a beta, in a private beta. And so I guess sort of like fingers crossed, but we have strong conviction that that is exactly what's going to happen. So the answer is essentially putting it under the hood, right? Really making it feel like, yeah, you're right. Like most people on our platform, especially the users, let alone the creators, they don't know what a MetaMask is, let alone what a wallet and the key, all the stuff you were kind of addressing. And so we make that just really comfortable and really like what they're used to seeing. There's some things that's really tough to work around, right? Like to be able to store a key phrase is a tough thing.
Yes.
Now we are exploring, part of my remit is partnerships in the ecosystems, and there are plenty of great companies out there that are looking to simplify those exact tasks. Everything from like literally, like wills and legacies for families, let alone for like creators, all the way to like, a unique challenge is most of these creators, especially the higher tier ones, I shouldn't say most, the higher tier creators are not necessarily even driving their social, like some of it, but also like there's maybe an agency or a team. And so how do you have, authorized access for things like that for those types of entities? And so like there's been a ton of challenges to work through and solve, and some are still actively being worked through. So that is definitely a big thing that I assume it's not just Calaxy related, it's sort of industry wide. Sure. That's our vision. It's through UX and through simplicity to making it all like simple. You should think about as a user that, you're trying to buy a video call with Spencer, or you're trying to go buy shoot around with Spencer, not that you're actually buying a token that's actually collateralized with USDC that's on HBAR. Like all that stuff kind of just doesn't matter to you, and unless it does, and then you can see it if you want to, right? There's a way to lift that veil. But we did that, and we believe that is the path to bridge from the Web 2 to the Web 3.
Yeah, and I think having a concrete use case and to have a design team focus on that concrete like consumer experience or like an actual user journey, an actual user research, actually trying to observe people using it, it's the only way to make it better. I think a lot of the times I feel like in DeFi or something like that, in a more kind of closed ecosystem, they are just impressing each other. They're making UI to entertain their friends or to be even more absurdly Windows 95 or Windows DOS in the case of Curve. It's a little performance art for how ironic you can get, but that ironicness you is actually like actively getting in the way of the understanding of what's going on. But I feel like it's like auto enthusiasts versus soccer moms, right? Auto enthusiasts want to know every single control and boost gauge and nitro and whatever it might be. The soccer mom just want to say, where do I start the car and where do I put my coffee, right? There's only two things that matters, and I gotta say, say, if you look at the Teslas, like press on the brakes and the door closes, like that's a good idea, right? Like that is just thinking about what people are trying to do, which is get going as quickly as possible. Even the stop button may be getting in the way of that journey. So I think, yeah, absolutely, right? Work on what people want.
Yeah, our CEO Solo literally says this all the time about like if you had to be an engineer to drive a car, we would, a lot of us would not be, most of us would not be driving cars. So
Not all,
exactly, Chris, yeah.
Yeah, there used to be two levers, right? Like the gear changings, there's two levers because that's kind of how it works with the Model T. And then we realized that you need no levers, right? Like the Braun Schaefer switch shift control is going to end up being a voice control or no control, like no gears, right?
In the living room at some point, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So do you see the Calaxy kind of a system be an open marketplace in support of other protocols and UI? You see in the Ethereum space, we see the Aave project founders started this Lens protocol, which is like, hey, let's take the skeuomorphic primitive of a Twitter feed or Twitter followers and turn them online, and then let the thousand flower bloom. Let people build different UI on top of the same primitive. There's no official client, no official UI, and there's this different intersection of experience on top of that kind of underlying protocol. Do you see Calaxy doing that within your ecosystem creator, or do you think that is leaving too much to chance in terms of the confusion of UX? Like there was a time where there's like 15 different Twitter clients and nobody knows what features can and cannot be in retweet supporting one and the other one. So there are some value, I think, in Twitter being kind of more locked down in the way they develop an official client. And those two different approach. Want to get your thoughts on where you guys stand within that diversity versus kind of like everybody know the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll come back to this, but at the protocol level, meaning not necessarily Calaxy Inc. or Calaxy, our app. Yes, I think we, open protocol. We believe in, interoperability, working with everyone else. In fact, we're, already validators on a bridge that goes from, from Hedera to Polygon to Ethereum. Yeah. Polygon's even an investor, for example. And right. So, yes, at the Calaxy app level, I think that, selfishly in the initial, we of course want to have, a lot of traction and get people to use it here. But as I've been, sort of alluding to throughout this whole conversation, using it here still might speak to like opening up and connecting to Shopify's or to maybe it's a marketplace. We believe in many front doors, and that's about access and distribution, so both in and out. And so by all means, if there's collaboration opportunities, then we're in. Like we're big fans of everything Dapper Lab is doing as an advisor to our project, right? We're big fans of a lot of groups, both in the Hedera ecosystem and out of the Hedera ecosystem.
Right.
So I think in the future and in the near future, you will see, at least from us, a lot of partnerships across the board, both with Web3, Web2, and even, again, more like physical or IRL type of relationships, whether it be, like leagues of sports or sort of media channels and all that kind of stuff, not to preview too heavily.
Yeah. I think that is the vision that everybody in Web3 is moving towards, where you have to deliver value to your early user. You have to deliver an experience that onboard new people to your thing. But once they're in this new thing, almost like going to a festival, they all mix together, right? Everybody bring their own people, but then at the end of the day, that opportunity to cross-pollinate is really why this open ecosystem is so much more interesting than the extremely silo, and then even increasingly more so system. I mean, there are certain things you can do on TikTok that you cannot do on Instagram, even though trying to imitate. So they have the same form but completely isolated state, and then it's almost like national security issue, not only for the United States but also for Meta, right? To prevent the leakage of people.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned a little earlier about sort of like the theater aspect of like building for your friends or building for for that silo. I think that's that's exactly right. While I think a lot of our closest competitors or closest comps are closer to, again, Web2 companies. There's some very obvious Web3 companies that are also social token driven that they built, and this is not right, wrong, or different. You have different demographics, different targets. They built it in such a way where it is kind of more towards what, how you explained it, where it's like either you have to create your own use cases, your own utility, et cetera, which is great for the market that they're going after. We knew that our creators, and, we have, I think almost 300, we have well over 200, 250 creators, even more than that grows every day. Their collective social media audiences just aggregate is like almost 300 million already, which is pretty staggering. Right. If you think about comparatively speaking, again, we haven't tapped into them yet, but we're going to. And so for us, it's like we built familiar utility cases right in the app, just as a starting point. And then we sort of give the keys to the creators for them to take it well beyond that, right? We gave like 5, 6, 10 features of like, hey, you could do this, this, and that. Here's some ideas, use cases. Now, fully, go crazy and go do your own, right? So if you're a chef, you can offer like cooking classes, one-on-one, one-to-many to corporations. You can have a TV show if you want, like whatever the heck you want to do, you can go do. If you're a comedian, same thing, and really any modal, right? You could be like you said, a soccer mom reviewing recipes, totally up to you. And maybe that's closer to like, is that closer to Patreon? I don't know, right? It just depends on where that person would maybe natively go. But the point is again, it's whatever the creators want to do. It's their world, and anyone could be a creator theoretically, but we're sort of it's their world. We're living in it, and we want to follow them. We want to consume that content and engage.
Absolutely. And I think, in my thesis is a lot of the Web2 use cases where Patreon will lose its brand and just becomes like social donation or like, social, like kind of like a public support would be one type of engagement model. And like, private collector would be another one, NFT, and they all blur together. And then, whether they came from the Web3 primitives, right, or they came from the Web2 kind of skeuomorphic evolution, I think they will all become a tool set, and that's really what I really believe in that composability on it. A lot of the work that we do in Cardstack is just dealing with the framework levels, like how do you do decentralized UI so the UI of TikTok and the UI of Patreon can work better together. And right now they don't work together at all, right? Like Instagram don't even link out beyond the link tree link in the profile. But can we really kind of look at the web and the Web3, which is, can we kind of follow Tim Berners-Lee original approach of linkages and link these things together? And right now, even in the dApp ecosystem, not to amplified by the fact that they have different blockchain underneath it, whether it's Flow or Ethereum. They don't really interoperate at the protocol level, much less at the UI level. And I think we're working on the JavaScript layer to make that happen. But to do that, we have to have this enclave of success of onboarding. Everybody has to bring their own friends, like, throwing a party together in LA or something, right? You have to bring your own friends, and they will have more fun if we all do our job. And then I think it's amazing that you're able to reach out to these kind of top and also middle class community to bring the tools together in a way that doesn't require them to go through a entire 10-course series of how to use MetaMask or how not to use MetaMask. That's even more interesting.
It's more important, yeah.
Right. So as a kind of way to look at, what's missing, right? Like, what is the one missing either technology or innovation that you're like, if this thing were to exist, then suddenly my work or the work that we do on our behalf of creator will get a lot easier. And then it could be a technical limitation of something. It could be something. What is that one thing that you're like pointing to is like, hey, that would be the moment that the type of vision that we are looking at will kind of get accelerated if that exists? What is that one missing thing?
Yeah, so great question. I think that I'm going to say this again a little bit self-servingly and a little bit leadingly, because I think we, in the last 8 months, 6 months, 9 months, even 1 year plus, there was a lot of vision, some pivoting, and a lot of challenges all the way throughout the whole life cycle, the whole chain, from the development side to the all the way up to like creator-facing stuff. Because if you think about it, it's almost a three-sided marketplace because you're
for sure
users, right? So part of it was it is really related to this onboarding conversation, right? We wanted the UX and the whole journey to be very similar, very, very smooth, to where, again, I'm just paying with a credit card and I'm buying this thing. Even if it's not a transactional thing, even if you're joining a fan club and it's a reoccurring payment, it's still about like smooth, transaction. With, as in the Web3 world, I mean, with KYC, excuse me, with things like KYC, with things like, we're collateralizing tokens and like all this kind of stuff, the smart contracts involved, like most payment providers and those pathways, they're just not used to that at all. And so finding the solution or having to build the solution in-house was a great, great challenge, let alone, sort of ecosystem stuff. I think if we maybe were building on a different ecosystem, things would look a little bit different, or maybe the partnership availability would be a little different. But still, you would fall in the same place because, a lot of the payment providers are probably, similar. And so that was a big challenge, right? And it still is. That we're working through it. We think that we, somewhat found a great solve to where that exact experience that I'm explaining will be what you will see as you use Calaxy. So you will come on, even if you don't have an account or you're logged out and you want to engage with something, you will be able to, and it'll be as simple as any other sign up anywhere else, which is, email and, and password kind of thing, or email, etc. And so that's a big bridge that I think that is going to help with this gap. And then sort of the rest will be not necessarily history. There are other things involved. If we get to places like, even in the solution I'm talking about, like kind of vaguely, there are still limitations and there are still like actual limits, right? So if you want to buy something like, if you're trying to buy something from Beeple's and it's $63 million, for example.
Right. That's
Again,
a very different fiat onboarding than something for $5.
but
Yeah.
at the same time, at least you're motivated and committed to at that kind of spend level that you're fine with going through a KYC type of deal.
Right. Exactly.
Used to that, right? So it's just different than maybe spending $500 or $100 on a video. But I think again, these are all industry-wide problems. But we believe that that we hope that we're the first, and believe that we'll be the first people to really solve that on a mainstream level. And again, by virtue of not just Calaxy or our brand or our thing, but really by virtue of who our creators are and what they will do, will then just lend itself to hey, we're the home to them for at least as a starting point. So.
Yeah, I think bringing the use case, allowing us to be able to talk to these payment provider, these either legacy or, whether legacy or not, they certainly have one foot in the traditional finance that makes that kind of bridge to the credit card or, bank account system possible. There seems to be two bifurcation, right? One, people are very comfortable with Creator and Shopify, but then they're completely uncomfortable with crypto. And then there's the trading people who charge a premium for letting you buy Bitcoin or whatever, and they don't really understand the kind of day-to-day consumer, what network do you want it and what's your slippage? It's not something you can even put on screen for getting $10 to buy an NFT, right? Or a Genesis. It's a big problem. The widgets are very confounding once you take it out of the DeFi use case.
And I'm not even remotely even talking about regulatory and all the unknowns and gray that's on that side, because no one, I assume and hope, no one's necessarily trying to skirt the law or to go around it, right? We're all trying to in fact be compliant. And if anything, there's not enough infrastructure and regulatory guidance from the regulators even to deal with that. And again, that's a more in the weeds conversation. But
absolutely,
I'd like to say that we, from Calaxy's standpoint, we built so much utility to specifically point to certain things and say, yeah, look, this is utility, et cetera. And that was part of the origins and working with our legal team, et cetera. So that's a whole other wrinkle.
For sure.
Not even thinking about that.
No, a lot of my lawyers friends demand or actually yearn for more use cases that allows them to say, hey, but what if I really just want to buy a fan club membership? Why do I have to go through KYC to do that? Just because I want to settle in a way that allows that relationship history be stored on a blockchain for other things to integrate. That seems kind of a difficult thing to explain. But I do believe that there's another regulator that exists in our midst, which is Google and Apple's App Store, right? In my dream is that in-app purchase is so easy, and why can't you buy points to play some sort of war game? Why can't I buy Spencer's points, right, for certain things? And they're still not comfortable with that if it's somehow on the blockchain, and obviously in certain jurisdiction, the fact that it's on blockchain makes it illegal. So the intersection between the regulator that we all talk about, in different countries, and then the regulator we don't talk about, which is Apple and Google, in the control of the App Store ecosystem, what you can do and what you can do with the ecosystem is really something that require more use cases to be able to have a constructive conversation that we're not all just trying to trade cryptocurrency.
That's a great point, and the constructive conversation comment at the end is exactly right. And it's a real, I'm sure with many Web3 companies, this is exactly what they're dealing with on the Apple Google side. So great call out. I'd love to be able to say even just giving the users the choice, right? I'm not trying to go around and be sneaky and say, hey, go here to fund all this stuff to avoid in-app payments. No, but why can't I simply just give the option to a user to say, hey, I could pay with my MetaMask, I could pay with a credit card, I could just do in-app payments and just use my Apple Pay or whatever it is, and just let the user decide and go from there. But that's, of course, there's lawsuits going on and all that stuff on there. So all to a place where it matters. And again, they're the gatekeepers to many fields. I believe, not to go off topic, but metaverse, same thing, in a different way, the same.
In a way, yeah. On one hand, you have Epic and Apple, mommy and daddy fighting it out, and then you have metaverse, which is an Uncle Zuckerberg has another plan about domination and selfies in metaverse. But I think that's another discussion another day. But I absolutely love the focus that in all these technical and legal and kind of paradigm shifting. If we focus on the creator and the relationship with the user, it does clear things up a little bit. It's like, hey, wait, what are we trying to do again? Are we trying to stake USDC over a bridge? No, we're trying to get someone to have a more intimate relationship that is also financially monetized in the right way, and then a lot of your funds go the other way, and that allows that to be firmer and be more constructive and more gameplay, more second or third loop of engagement. I think that is really the goal of it. Is there something else that is in your roadmap that you want to particularly highlight that hey, look for this thing? I know you guys are in beta right now, but I'm sure you're cooking up something that you want to like, maybe like tease a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure when this is necessarily airing or going to air, but yeah, we're in the next, I think, few weeks or after Labor Day or so. We're definitely going to be making some announcements and having some pretty exciting things that not even just announcements about what we're doing, but really an opportunity for the world to engage with us and to get involved. I don't want to necessarily go too much beyond that, but essentially, we'll finally be coming out of our, we weren't in stealth mode at all, but coming out of our box and saying hello to the world and becoming
exciting.
Yeah, becoming communicative and becoming engaging on a consistent basis. And so, as football season rolls around and basketball season rolls around, all that kind of stuff, there's going to be a lot of fun things that we're going to look at and do. And it's not just sports related at all. But yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. But I would say stay tuned in the coming weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we're able to record it before that, so we can say, it's not really just like PR, and we're really talking about how, as fellow builders, we can kind of learn from each other and like facing the same problem. On the subscription billing stuff, which is what we're doing, the onboarding of fiat on-ramp, it's the same problem they will run into. Like people want to subscribe to Web3 software using their wallet, but some people need to onboard for the first time. What do? It's the same problem, right? It's a different community, but it's, again, a bit far away. So it's always fantastic to be able to exchange ideas about how to bring more users to this land and then, make this a rich place to be.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, thank you.
So thank you. Thank you for your insight, and it's so exciting to see a project that is not stealth, but actually heads down working. Sometimes I feel like the opposite of Web3 is that everybody is too open about everything they're working all the time, and if you look at it, it's like you haven't really done anything. You've done like two things. I have created my own MetaMask. Yeah. This is the beginning of the creator economy journey. I've seen a lot of those Twitter posts, especially from Web2 transplants, but you're doing real work, trying to make it all work. And I'm rooting for you and your team, and I'm really thankful for the clarity that your team is giving. I'm sure that clarity is sometimes unforgiving, which is like, this is not good enough yet. Let's make it better. We need more of that. Instead of a little bit too much self-congratulation because you wrote 200 lines of solidity.
No, yeah. As you know, we're our own, sort of strongest critics. So absolutely. And again, thank you for having great questions all around. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely, and thank you for your insight. And as always, we do this every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern, and then we will distribute this podcast to wherever you find your pods. And hopefully this series provides context and education about what people are working on and also why they're working on it. And more importantly, what we imagine to be possible despite all the ups and downs on prices and the excitement and the dissolution that we see in the mainstream press. We believe in this as a Web3 community. And we hope you continue joining us in the journey. And until next time, take care.